All your sites are working. Are all your sites working?
Pramod, I can't hear. Yeah.
All your sites are working?
No, Pramod, about 20-25% are working.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Murli. Sriram here.
Who is that?
Sriram here.
Sriram. Hi, how are you? Good to see
A
you.
long time.
Yeah, very, very long time, man. We were all hiding in bunkers in the basement.
Wonderful, wonderful. Look forward to catching up.
Yeah. We'll start again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hi, Anup.
Hi. Hi.
Long time.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Anupriya.
Hi, sir. How are you?
Hearing you speak.
Oh, I
Wonderful.
did.
That's good fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
We want to hear more from you, Anu.
Oops. That foils all my strategies.
So I just would switch off my video and.
Hey, we'd like to see you, yeah?
Huh?
We'd like to see you, yeah? We haven't seen each other for a year and a half. At least
Look at
here
that.
we can see.
Look at that. Hey, Srivatsan is on. So time
Hi,
to
hi.
switch off. Bye, guys.
I'll see you later.
Look to see you guys soon.
Srivatsan, should we start or should we wait for another few minutes?
We have another 3 minutes to go. Just
Oh.
Never be early, always be late.
couple of minutes, we'll start. Okay, Sarah, we can start.
Hi, good evening, everybody. On behalf of Chennai Architecture Foundation, I extend a very warm welcome to you all. Once again, we are back with this new online format. This will be the second of the series of talks on practice in Chennai. Today, we'll be looking at what it means to practice architecture at current times and viewing it from different vantage points. We'll also be looking at generational shifts in perspective and practices. We have a panel of 4 architects who have started their practices at different time periods. Today we have with us Pramod Balakrishnan, an architect from CEPT 1974 batch. He worked in Kuwait with a firm as a part of design team. He set up his practice edifice in Chennai in 1987 after working for Karche and Associates for a year. We have also with us M. Murali, who graduated from School of Architecture and Planning in 1981 and Masters from McGill University in 1984. He founded Murali Architects in 1990 and has been practicing for the last 30 years. His interests are in improving architectural education in Tamil Nadu and has been visiting a faculty in many architectural schools. Anupriya Subayan is an architecture graduate from School of Architecture and Planning, Anna University, 2007 batch, and also has a master's in interior design from Pratt Institute, New York. She co-founded O Studio in 2010, a multidisciplinary practice in Chennai. She's also a co-founder of Madras Inherited, a heritage initiative,
Like this.
O Pixel, an architecture photography initiative, and Merit League, a turnkey venture.
Yeah.
Besides a strong belief in impactful design, her personal aesthetic is a juxtaposition of contemporary modern design with traditional elements. Kishore Panikar completed his bachelor's in architecture in Mumbai at Rizvi College of Architecture in 1997 and worked with multiple practices in Mumbai and Chennai. In 2008, he co-founded Architecture Red, a planning and architectural design practice. Seeing a building's influence beyond the boundaries of its physical site and engaging with community within a context outside is ongoing exploration for his practice.
Sarah,
Now,
can
I would
you mute everybody, Sarah? Can you try and mute everybody?
Mute everybody.
Okay,
Can
okay.
you just mute everyone?
You can.
So let me just now hand over the proceedings to Srivatsan to take
Oh,
over the
சரி,
things
நான்
forward
next
and
time
hope
அந்த
you all
side
enjoy
போகும்போது
the
நானும்
discussion.
பார்க்கிறேன்.
Sarah, you
Okay,
need to mute.
Yeah, one second. I'm just
Okay. சரி, நான் இதை சொல்றதுக்கு
Okay.
தான் கூப்பிட்டேன்.
Great.
Okay, okay.
I request everyone to mute if those who are not speaking.
Okay, bye.
kindly please, whoever is not participating, kindly mute your audio, please.
Sarah, you can also.
I'm muting. There are few. I'm just muting them.
You hit a bullseye.
Okay, good. So we'll start.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I hope I haven't muted any of the panelists.
Okay. Thanks, Ira, and welcome again. This is the second of the series, as Ira said, and we have another 2 more coming after this. And all of them are focused on what it means to practice in Chennai. Because bulk of our audience or people who have tuned in are from Chennai, but I can also see a few names from other cities, and quite happy to welcome them as well. So we met for the first time after a long break on April 21st. At that time, we had a roundtable format with 6 people, and 2 of them were non-architects. They were developers. We started off our conversation talking about what are the challenges the firms face, and even how the industry responded to the pandemic situation. And then we extended our conversation to cover issues of challenges. Some of them are old, recurring, some of them are new. We also talked about the opportunities the city offers for architects. So it was a very interesting conversation, and we were grateful for the two developers who joined, and particularly for their views, which substantially differed from the architects, and that was the point of bringing them on board. And today also looks like another promising conversation. We have 4 firms. Saira introduced all of them, and this intentionally it's been composed with 2 senior firms. Maybe I should call Pramod super senior, yeah. And the Pramod and Murli, who started practice 3 decades ago, and Kishore and Hanu, who started practice 12 years ago. Even though Kishore, though deceptively looks young, is a bit older than Hanu. But both of them started the practice almost at the same time in 2008. So together, Pramod and Murli represent senior practices with more than 3 decades of experience. And we have 2 firms and 2 practices which sort of have about a decade or so experience. And this was intentionally done. Not that the focus of this conversation is to emphasize on generational gap and see how 2 different generations of practices look at things differently. That could come through, but that's not the focus here. The focus here is basically sort of exchange views, looking at the adaptability, the resilience, taking a historical perspective and so on. So we have 4 themes today for the conversation. First, we'll begin with discussing how the 2 sets of firms, the senior ones and the younger ones, faced the current challenges. Was there any difference, or this this crisis impacted everyone in the equal manner? So what was the difference? And the second theme that we would look at is the conditions of practice. What are the conditions of practice at a certain point in time, and how it changed, and how practices have adapted to it, and so on and so forth. The third theme we will talk about is specific to the city, Chennai. What is it to practice in Chennai? And how all the 4 practices look at the city and what it offers. The last section would focus on the working conditions. So we will look at what are the working conditions here. We'll try and candidly talk about fees, salaries, what is the kind of recruitment these firms do, what are their views about education, and so on, which I'm sure will be of particular interest for the young graduates or young professionals who are logged in now. So let me start with the first theme, which is how do these firms have responded to challenges? I'm first going to direct this question to both Pramod and Murli, because Pramod, Murli, both of you have about 3 decades of experience, and certainly this is not the first crisis you may have seen. I vividly remember in 2005 when there was this huge real estate crisis. I know firms which closed, architects shifted to academics or did something else. You too might have gone through a similar problem, but not only you survived that crisis, but you also did well. Your presence now and the kind of projects that you're doing sort of attest that. Now, what I want to ask you is, what is the difference between this crisis and the previous one? And what did you do then, and what are you doing now in order to meet this? Were you caught off guard? You sort of didn't anticipate this? And what is the current state of your practices? So we'll start with Pramod. Pramod.
Good evening to all. Yes, this came out of the blue for all of us. And it's not been like any of the other downhills that we've had in the last 30 years. But this one, of course, was was terrible in the sense that it shut everybody down. How did we weather it? We weathered it because of the fact that we accepted it, and we, as a team, went through it positively and are still positive about coming out of it. And also one more thing is that being a 30-year practice, we've experienced many such slowdowns, but not something like this for so long. But we've been able to, what would I say, ride each wave as it came, and strong enough to ride another wave. And what we also further did was we actually reduced our staff to a bare minimum, not by sending people away, but people left to their villages and their hometowns and things like that because of the pandemic. And projects have started coming in, fairly large projects have been started coming in. And we've learned a new concept of working from home. And haven't really felt hit very badly because of the fact that we got that experience through many crises: the 2008 crisis, the 2005 crisis, 1990 crisis, and of course the crisis in the Indian economy was not the pandemic. It had begun in 2017, and by 2019, real estate was not really looking up. So there was some, what would I say, vision of something coming that is not going to work, and we were being prepared for it. So I think we're prepared. No issues about it. There are hardships. Without hardships, you don't become stronger. And these hardships teach you a lot of things. And for that, I think it's important that when we get back, we look at things completely differently. Okay.
Murli?
So, hi, good evening, friends. So, we are a bunch of 40 architects, 40 people together, 40 people team. And we have an approach like a factory kind of an architect's office. It's always, talking, chatting, brainstorming, noisy. Suddenly this pandemic came, the news came. And we were all shell-shocked. And but we didn't want to accept it. We tried 2 days of online training, and then everybody had to go to the native places. All 40 went to that place, and then first 1 week it's a break time, so they have to settle with the family and set up stuff. And then we started to work, and eventually the 40 became 10. Many could not cope up with the online working. They were not comfortable. And many of them felt this is the time to take a break. So almost everybody, every day we will see somebody going off from the online meet. And we also had another problem. The clients and the consultants, they were trusting us. They were really looking forward to our initiative. And we didn't want to disappoint them. So every day we used to kind of catch up, doubling our efforts or tripling our efforts in reaching the clients through WhatsApp, online meeting, and giving an illusion or a presence that we are still working. So they were happy. And we made them feel it's a good time to work on all the pending drawings, pending works. So the entire family was sitting at home. So all the decisions, they could do it very easily. So in fact, we motivated them, even we can look at the interiors. So the projects came in, a lot of projects came in, and we also wanted to write about what all we did all these years in all the media, and projects from different parts of India started coming in. But then we had staff crisis. So we recruited people from different parts, from Calcutta, Delhi, everywhere. But then their intentions were different. They were not sharing our philosophy or our way of working. They were looking at time pass kind of a thing and looking at revenues. So whatever we believed in, their beliefs were very different, and it really didn't work. After 3 or 4 months, we called our old staffs back. By the time they had relaxed, settled, all that, they were also bored. They also needed to generate revenue for the family. So they joined back and we got about 40 number back. And then the projects were pouring in, I would say pouring in. So we had to send projects to younger architects, deserving younger architects in Chennai, in Coimbatore, in Tirupur. So about 20-25 projects we diverted and we gathered about 15 projects or so. So that way the projects came in. But then we realized the residential projects are not going to feed us for a long time. We were working for an educational institution and they wanted to make use of our services. They said, there are two major projects. Can you build it? Can you design and build it within this time? The challenge was there were two massive basements and the site is in low-lying 3 feet waterlogged area and that too in the rainy days. So from September to December, we were supposed to complete the basements. So we took it up as a challenge and worked day and night, I would say. I used to be, at 2 o'clock in the night, call the watchman whether the generator is on, whether the pumps are working, and completed the projects in January as promised. And we realized the in coming days, the buildings are not going to be happening because the labor force is going to be a problem. So we devised, why not we do buildings in steel? So we learned how to build in steel from other countries. So all two major projects, we worked out all the working drawings in and motivated our consultants to adopt to newer ways of working. So that way, I think we are safe with the projects. And the problem that we are anticipating is working online seeming to be a major hurdle, and monitoring them is also another issue. Now, Srivatsan had asked me about the difference between 2005 and this period. 2005 is almost like a man-made. And then what we did was, instead of looking for projects here, I went to Seychelles. There is an island, and built a massive hospital, 2.15 lakh square feet of hospitals. And I'm always part of social organization, NGOs. So in Andaman Nicobar Islands, in 1,500 kilometers sea straits, we built 55 schools. So that 2005 to 2009, I was building in Arabian Sea and this side on the other one. So by the time everything got sorted out and we were back in business. So, but this time the challenge is not going to be small. So all of us have to really, get our resources and plunge into action. But I'm positive things are going to be happy.
Glad to hear that you've been very busy. I don't know whether you have any crisis at all. So, good to hear, because all the time we are hearing over the last 1.5 years the difficult stories and layoffs and projects drying up. But you must be amongst the, I don't know whether to say lucky few, but talented few who has managed to get projects.
Yes, Srivatsan sir, Professor Srivatsan, the thing is the enquiries came from remote villages. You won't believe, Satanur, there is a client wanted to build. There is an Arachalur, there is another small town. And Kangayam, they wanted to do in 3.5 acres.
I hear you're a king of residences, so I'm not surprised that you're all over Tamil Nadu. But good to hear. So I'm going to move to the other two. We'll start with Anu first. Anu, yours is the youngest of the lot. So how was it for you? How did you look at it?
Yeah, so it definitely came as a shock to us as well. But I think for us, the transition period was not as intense because we are a smaller firm and we're very close-knit firm. So in terms of the logistics of switching to a work from home method or having basically shutting down the office, I don't think that transition period was too much. Where we faced difficulty just personally for Tahir and me is because we have multiple initiatives working under the same roof. It's easy to coordinate all of that if you're working in the same space. But when you're thrown into a pandemic situation, then figuring out how to invest time in into different initiatives and different resources was definitely a challenge. But I think being a younger smaller team because there were all these things that we were doing already, because we already had project specific WhatsApp groups or team specific WhatsApp groups. So it was easy to make that transition. But in terms of how we managed through the pandemic, I would say definitely there were projects that were on site that did come to a grinding halt, but we were fortunate that they were already in a good enough place that we didn't necessarily lose any projects. And even the projects that were on the design board were the same. So we could just take a temporary hiatus and still continue with the work that we had
So
on
what
board.
are you saying? You're saying, Anu, that you had, other than architecture projects, you have other initiatives that helped you cover the...
No, I'm saying, so since we run Triple O Studio, Madras and Heritage, Triple O Pixel, everything is within the same space in our studio. Figuring out how to do that virtually was a difficulty.
Oh, good. Kishore,
Um,
sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I mean, just a couple of, but it's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead if I mistimed myself.
Yeah, so I was saying, so we didn't necessarily, so it's great to hear Murli sir thriving through the pandemic, but our main goal through the pandemic was to make sure that we were able to pay salaries, we would not have any layoffs, we would try to retain as many projects as we could, being a smaller firm, and I'm happy to say that we managed to do that. So all things considered, I think we did okay.
Good to hear that. So Kishore?
Yeah, so definitely, I mean, it was a crisis for the practice. I mean, given the speed with which it came and, in the matter of a couple of months, things were totally different. So we didn't really get time to kind of comprehend what is happening, kind of react to the events, that were rolling out. But many architects from a studio also are from different cities around Tamil Nadu, from outside Tamil Nadu. So they wanted to get back home with their family. The whole notion of working remotely, and online was not something we were too familiar with. Many of our projects are also outside of Chennai. And so the inability to travel, to visit the sites, it meant a lot of long distance coordination, reviews, etc., which was a new experience. So of course, since then we have managed to kind of take some time and process the situation and its impact on the practice in that sense. And for us, like Pramod said, even before the lockdown, some larger real estate projects had shown kind of signs of slowdown, in that sense they were being either deferred or cancelled. And we as a firm, frankly, had not really built up any financial safety net, which would see us through maybe 5-6 months of reduced income. So there were a few tough months, and we had to take some steps like, reducing working hours and proportionately salaries in order to bring the overheads under some control. We also had to reach out to a landlord. Our studio operates sort of a rented premises, and to get some elbow room there to operate in some kind of rent-free period, etc. So basically, we pushed back some of our expenses by a few months in the hope that we can kind of make up for it when things get better. Frankly, being a partnership firm also for both Biju and me, it meant that we took substantial personal hits, financially. So in that sense, it was a crisis for our practice, in the last 10-12 years, the first one that we've seen of this scale. So this kind of forced us to look back at our own operations very closely and, to try and understand efficiencies, profitability much more closely, and critically. And if something like this were to happen again, how as a practice can we handle it, better? So coming out of the first lockdown, we had a smaller studio in the office. Quite a few of our architects who had gone to their native cities didn't really want to come back to Chennai, and a few of them opted to study further, and so that brought down our studio strength, to a manageable number. Certain projects had stagnated, and hence this seemed to work from that standpoint. We could reallocate resources, etc., and projects and personnel. About the question of the practice being back to its earlier self, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the pandemic has definitely and permanently changed, the way we operate. For the good, we believe. I think the ideology and the philosophy of our work remains the same. The way we approach any project as a process of design exploration remains the same. But operational efficiency, we've realized, goes a long way. The way we handle a project through its life cycle clearly, directly impacts profitability. And that is something that we feel we have learned a lot about. So selection and allocation of people, hiring going forward is going to be very critical. And this efficiency directly, we believe will kind of impact our ability to to ride through a similar crisis, if it comes through. So these have been our major kind of learnings through this.
That's quite a candid kind of points you made, Kishore. The couple of things that you said is something that I would like to follow up with others as well. But before that, for all those who are listening in, please feel free to type your comments, questions. Certainly at the end, unlike the previous conversation, we'll have a Q&A as well. But if there is something that you want to comment or ask, please feel free to do so that I could weave those questions into the conversation. Coming back to you, Pramod and Murli, see, from what I understand from what everyone is saying, is that the basket of two things. One is the basket of projects. For example, Pramod, you have been substantially working for developers. So the kind of crisis you face is different from Murli, who's been principally working with private clients. And correct me if I'm wrong, Murli, a good number of residential and institutional projects, which sort of saves you as against, again, Kishore, who's also doing substantial real estate projects, whereas Anu has a cross-section of big and small projects. So is a lesson that probably firms, if possible, I'm sure it's not possible for everyone to have, but a good cross-section of projects. Second, from what Kishore says is that practice won't be the same post-pandemic, he says. Certainly, we'll have to think in terms of operational efficiency and costs. Do you really agree with that, Pramod and Murli? Murli, you want to go first?
I definitely agree with Kishore's statement. The type of practice is going to drastically change. And I don't know how long this waves keeps coming. Okay, my fear is it may continue for 1 or 2 years. We're looking at the reluctance of the staffs to go for vaccination and the families' hesitance and all that. So we don't want to open up the office. So the way we are going to practice is going to tremendously change. That's what I believe.
Fortunately for us, we not only work for developers, we work for institutions also. And what actually hit us was the institution shutting down. Many schools and colleges that we were doing just suddenly completely stopped. And there was no inkling of them even picking up and starting. Developer projects are coming even now to us, fairly large projects. So that is not an issue. The issue has always been that now these projects are going to take much longer than what it usually took. So that is going to be something that we'd have to consider. And therefore, what happens in this situation is that from being a 15-person company in 2008, 2009, we have 50 people, we are now 8 or 9. We now have a core group that can work on many projects because these projects are extended. So we're now looking at super efficiency of each person. And that's helping. And each one of them is putting in more effort. In fact, work from home, people are working much more than working at office.
Pramod, would super efficiency bring in some more remuneration, or the remuneration stays where they are?
We have increased their salaries as of April.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. Good.
And then the lockdown happened again.
Okay, Anu, how do you see this, Anu? Are you going to change your way of operating, or do you want to?
No, as Kishore said, I think this is definitely a reality check for all of us, right? Because we don't know when this wave or when the pandemic is ending. And I think the new way going forward is to be readily adaptable to every situation, because I think between the first wave and the second wave itself, the time that we took to adapt to the work from home situation drastically shortened because we were already used to the first wave. So I definitely think going forward, it will be a combination of working conditions for, as Pramod sir said, optimal efficiency.
Okay, now there are a couple of questions, probably I'll just take them here. So the one is, what does the panel think should the young firms or the people who have just started firms should do? Is there a strategy that you would offer? Is there some kind of an hint you think they could do, or they could join you if they want to? That's my addition to the question. And there's also another question which asks, based on your understanding of the real industry, how long will this sort of situation, this grim situation would continue? So, Kishore, you want to take that first?
Yeah, so for young firms, I mean, yeah, it is a tough time. I really don't know if I'm qualified to give any advice here, but I would probably try to stay as lean as possible and trying to keep your overheads as low as possible. Those are the first few steps. Projects are going to be there. I mean, it's just a matter of time. But I think something that we have learned is that if we can manage our time and resources more efficiently, firm will prosper. It's a matter of time.
There is an add-on question here, Kishore. Someone is asking whether this would pay for more collaboration between firms.
Yeah. So
of their age or experience.
Yeah. So one of the things that happened during this time is also that we've also explored collaborations with other, because with other firms in other cities and other states of the country, which has also opened up new opportunities for us. So definitely collaborations, I think, is a way forward. How work is allocated within these partners is something that each firm will have to work out. But as a concept, I think the idea of collaboration goes a long way in focusing on, you don't have to be a jack of all trades in that sense. So if you collaborate with the right people and you can bring different skill sets to the table, then you're able to then go out there and probably try and look at many more projects of different typologies and then work together as a team. So I think that's something that helps a lot going forward.
Okay.
Something that can be thought
Thanks.
of.
That question was from Satya, and the previous two questions were from Anup and Jagan. Now, let's move to the next, because we have a limited time, so I want to cover all the 4 thematic areas. So the next question is about conditions and factors. Now, I found interesting statistics in the registration, which said the council's data, it says about 70% or more than 70% of registered architects are below 45 years age. And in Chennai particularly, we have about 5,220 registered architects. And I think it's updated because the council website says as of February 2021. So I assume that's more or less accurate. So if you apply that 70%, so we're looking basically between 3,500 to 4,000 architects in the city are below 45 years old, which means most of them, I'm assuming, maybe I'm correct or maybe I'm wrong, that they should have started practice post 1996 or almost around 2000. So which means basically most of them have started practice in the post-liberalization period, when already there's an extensive amount of private investment, plenty of real estate projects, there is a flourishing market there. So compared to you two, Murli and Pramod, who probably started a little earlier. Now, I'm going to ask you both, Murli and Pramod, how have the conditions changed in Chennai over the last 30 years? As when I say conditions, here I'm asking, have the profiles of the clients changed? Their demand for what sort of a projects they need have changed? What happens to the business side of it? It's better now in terms of fees and costs and so on. Is there a significant improvement? Pramod, you want to go first?
Yeah, not having been born and brought up or educated in Madras, I came into the city not knowing anybody. And the first thing I saw in the classified ad was architect design house for rent. And that struck me because that means the rent was going to be higher because the guy had paid for an architect. Right? That was a shock to me. And there weren't too many architects. There was only one architecture college. So the whole idea of architecture was within a very small group of people, right? And patronage is also quite good. We, from there, started slowly working. So before the liberalization, there were projects, but there were not projects in IT, there were not projects in education. There were other kinds of projects that we worked on. And after liberalization, it just blew up, right? The IT boom helped us a lot. The education boom helped us a lot. And of course, housing, which is our major typology that we work with, gave us a lot of incentives. And we worked all across the country and outside. And so therefore, this suddenly opened up things for us that would not have been possible but for liberalization. Clients, of course, they changed. Money was there, people were traveling, people were seeing things. What really got us was what people wanted was not what they were. Right? What they were by people and what they wanted in terms of physicality were completely two different things. And that was something that we had to deal with imagery. It's still difficult, but we managed that. So the nouveau riche wants all kinds of things because they've traveled. So that way, we are learning to be more patient. I wasn't as patient in the 80s and 90s. I'm more patient now with my clients. And sometimes I walk away from them because I don't have that patience. So that way, the confidence has come to not hold on to any project. If you're not there, there is no this thing, you would say, sorry, shake hands, let's go away. So there has been a tremendous amount of change. The growth has been incredible, I would say, without even today, I don't look at myself, what am I going to be tomorrow? What am I going to be day after tomorrow? Our work at our office is not based on what we want to be, but what we are today. And the today is what makes the tomorrow. So we're never keeping a standard that I want to reach here, never. And we never looked at our business as profit and loss. I don't know whether we make profit on anything or we make loss on anything. If money comes, it comes. If money doesn't come, it doesn't come. So that's the way we looked at it. And it's been a great help.
Murli, I'm sure you will also sort of echo similar sentiments in terms of growth of projects.
Yeah.
But what about profitability, Murli?
Yeah.
Is it good time to make money? And I mean, post
I will divide the entire 30 years into three parts. The first part is 90s to 2000, and 2000 to 2010, and 2010 to 20. 90s. The client is the single dominant person in a home building. The head of the house is the leader. So he comes out with a set of requirements, no changes. You make the plans, it gets built. But 2000, the entire family comes around and they form opinions. They come as a team. So 90s, we were able to, the profitability was very, very high because there was not much changes in the drawings made. So whereas when it comes to 2000 and the present times, I think plenty of challenges, plenty of changes, but then the profitability is less, but it's exciting. So I would rate the earlier part, even those times, the fee negotiations were not there much. So the industry projects, you ask for 3%, you are given. Whereas in the recent times, I think the fee level, people, I would cite one example. I used to work for a large industrial house. They used to pay 3%, whereas the same industrial house, after 15 years, when they were offering 5 per square feet. So, that is kind of deterioration I saw. So in the recent times, I don't think the younger generation will, have a very good time compared to the times we had earlier.
No, then there's a follow-up question to both of you, Pramod and Murli, from Khatija, that what in the pre-liberalization period, whether the state was a good patron for architects, unlike now, where only it sort of opens for select architects. Do you really feel that kind of a difference between pre-2000 and 2000?
Yeah, so I do. I will cite when I about to start my practice, I competed in some of the competition floated by the government. So we won out of five or six projects, we won 2 projects, and the corporation commissioner offered 0.5% as my fee, but I always have this council book in my hand wherever I go. I showed the book and fought with the commissioner. He literally called the Tavalis, securities, to throw me out. So literally they dragged me out of the corporation building. And after a month, the same commissioner calls me and he says, I checked up with the colleagues of mine from other states. What you demanded is correct. And from that day, I would have done nearly 20 to 30 large-scale government projects without any hassle. But when it comes to 2005, 2010, there is a deterioration. The ethics were very bad, corruption set in, the IAS officers didn't have a role. The engineers, the corporation, other engineers, they devised a way to eliminate architects. They went for BOT and thereby cleverly eliminating all of us. And they could get the BOT and work with some young person for a very nominal, very throwaway price. So there is definitely a very strong change.
No. Prabhu, do you think now currently the state has a lot of restrictive criteria in terms of procuring architecture service? So most of them...
Yeah, firstly, I've never worked with the state. Not one of my projects across my career has been for the state. Not that I
bad, Pramod?
I think from a perspective point of view, in terms of, I would have loved to work for the state, but I don't think I have the mental capacity and ability to be able to manage. I struggle with CMD itself on my own projects. So therefore, I was not up to it, even though it would have opened avenues otherwise. There was never a desire for me to work for the state. I never approached anybody. I'm happy to.
Okay, good. Yes, Murli, please.
Yeah. See, if you look at the life of Charles Korea, or if you look at Rajrival, most of the projects done by them are for the state. So the state has tremendous amount of money. As rightly told by Pramod, it's very, very difficult, next to impossible to work with the government agency. But then we need to step up our efforts because thousands of crores are with them. Now we are talking about pandemic and survival of the younger generation. I always compare the state of Karnataka with Tamil Nadu. If you look at Karnataka, even the municipality, any small project, even a community center, there is a small competition. Five of the local architects, imagine Kadalur, a small town, and the corporation is building some funny stuff. Whereas it's a procedure. If architects combine together, influence the government to form set of rules so that every building of the government should be designed by an architect and make sure the IAA and whatever COA combine together, form this legislation, then I think everybody's job problem will be over. So I feel taking cue from the great architects, government fundings are there, and only with that we can elevate the quality of architecture. Other than that, I think
point taken.
It's not possible to elevate the state of architecture.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Kishore, I know maybe you don't have those kind of long experience, but even within this 12 years, I'm sure you would have seen some substantial changes between 2008, 15, and probably 19 for sure. So how has it been for you in terms of, even within a decade, have you seen substantial changes in your client profile? Have you seen fluctuations in the fee structure? Have the level of competition and negotiations have increased in the last few years? Kishore, you want to go first?
Relatively, it's been reasonably, there's not been too much of ups and downs there. We've been working with institutional clients in the earlier part of our practice. Subsequently went on to do work with certain real estate developers as well, and eventually, added some private houses, etc. So we've slowly built up on this typology. We've also been doing planning projects. So as far as mix of clients are concerned, that's how it's gone. the negotiations and the challenges have pretty much kind of remained the same. And but what we have started looking at is, like your earlier question about the profitability and the act of balancing, fees and costs in a practice. I mean, for us, the largest chunk of our expenses are salaries, right? Because that's a real spend largely. So profitability obviously then becomes very closely related to staffing and the number of people one has working on projects. So for example, in our studio, we don't have draftspersons in the studio, right? And the architect is involved in all aspects of the project, right? From concept presentations to generating GFCs to managing drawing revisions once the project has started construction, etc. So irrespective of the typology, the way we work, we have a team of architects dedicated on the project through its life cycle in the studio. Which means that these are fixed costs, on the project. And if the project is delayed beyond a specific timeline, then financially it becomes a loss-making proposition, for us. So maybe there are other models of practice, where you can have draftspersons who can pick up the technical drawings and GFCs beyond a particular stage of the project, etc., and hence bring down your resource cost to the practice. So we haven't really explored that route yet. We really don't find ourselves very comfortable with that idea yet. So given that, we want to work this way, the fee has to be reasonably good. I mean, this has been something we've always openly addressed with our clients over the years. The value that good fees brings to the project, is important for the clients to see, to feel okay about paying more than what they may have paid other firms in the past. So, the only way a practice like ours can achieve some stability is when we find good enough patrons, and projects who are ready to pay a good fee. And that is an ongoing process for us. And we have seen positive movement in that direction over the past 1 year. Many clients have understood, our arguments about a better fee. And we hope that we see the trend continuing going forward.
Good. Anu, how has it been for you in terms of client profile and the issues which Kishore just raised in terms of fees and profitability as an AIM firm?
So because we are quite a multidisciplinary practice, since we do interiors, architecture, and urban design, our client roster has always been diverse, and I don't think that has changed in the last 10 years. But one trend that we have been facing, especially in the last 2-3 years, maybe it's a result of the pandemic also, is an increasing number of clients and projects where the clients are shopping for architects, which we actually didn't face so much in the first 7 to 8 years of our practice. But now it's very commonplace for somebody to call you and just ask for a number and then go to somebody else. Because since there are so many architecture schools right now and architecture firms are literally popping up by the day, undercutting is everywhere right now. And I feel like that it has really risen in the last 2-3 years, which we didn't face before. So it's more about how we're dealing with the projects and the clients than the nature of the clients itself changing.
Yeah, this undercutting fees called for a separate conversation itself.
Yeah. It feels like they're approaching you more for your number and the number that they have to pay you rather than the value that you provide for a project.
Okay, I will just leave that point there because I know if you get in, it's going to take some time to come out of that. Hopefully another forum will talk about that. So let me move on to the next point. So far we have kept good time, so I want to continue with that. Let's talk specifically about the city, Chennai. Anu, was it really I know you're not from Chennai, but you settled here in Chennai. So was it difficult for you to find a foothold in this city in terms of getting projects, establishing practice?
So when we actually started O Studio, since I'm born and raised in Coimbatore, so Tahir, my partner, and I worked from 2 different cities. So he worked out of Chennai and I worked out of Coimbatore. So for the first 2 to 3 years, that's how it worked. And then we kind of established base in Chennai. But what worked for us, especially for Tahir in the initial years, was I think the corporation was coming up with some very interesting projects that we got to be a part of, like the Nama Toilet project and some of the BRR projects. And him being an urban designer, he was able to get a foothold into those projects. And that relationship has continued till this day. the independent architecture interior design projects were one-off and they took some time to build. But we started our practice at a time when some of these very interesting projects were coming up and we were able to cash in on them, so to speak. So it was okay.
So in a sense, your firm is sort of partly a second generation firm. So there was some leverage there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Kishore, I'm going to turn to you. Have you ever thought, instead of settling in Chennai, had you sort of opened office? I know you have some small office running in Bangalore. Imagine it was the other way, that you based yourself in Bangalore and had a small shop here. You would have done better. Has it ever crossed your mind? I mean, you can speak, I don't know what Biju thinks, but...
Yeah, we prefer the weather in Bangalore any day, but for us, frankly, the only other city where we could have possibly set up shop, is Bombay, because that's where both Biju and I studied, and we have many of our friends there, who practiced initially. But when we look back now, I think we're glad that we chose Chennai, because, true that, it does take longer here to negotiate and find common ground with clients you have here, and many of them who you call conservative in that sense. But we were lucky, we got our initial break with a group of clients who were looking at something new, looking at, wanting to do something new and different in that sense from what they were, what the prevailing firms in Chennai were offering. And hence we got lucky. Given Biju's exposure in the US and mine in Bombay, for a good 10 to 12 years before we set up Architecture Ed, it meant that, we had done our hard yards in our previous offices, and, we got enough of a varied experience on projects of different scales and typologies before we set up our own practice. And so we had enough work under our belt in that sense to command some attention and respect when we started. So in that sense, we had a body of work in our portfolio, which, the clients did not really get a sense that we were a new practice with little experience. So that helped us a lot. So in that sense, Chennai was, though we feel it's a conservative place, we felt that, the time we started in 2008, things were already very slow because of, the Lehman Brothers collapse, etc. So there was enough time to have these conversations with potential clients and to show them the work. And that slowdown when we started, in hindsight now, looks like it was a blessing in disguise, because we got a lot of conversations going then. Many of them have reaped projects after that.
But Murli and Pramod, do you really agree this characterization of Chennai as a conservative city? They don't try and they only go for tried, tested, experienced architects. They don't support young firms. I'm sure at some point you two were young and you try to open shop. And if I'm correct, both of you are not from Chennai either.
No.
So how did you guys manage?
It was kind of a shock for me, because after doing set in 5 years with a British firm in the Gulf, working all across, doing large projects, large computer centers, and all part of the design team, I come to Chennai and people say, "What have you built?" The first project I got to do was add a toilet to a Verghese woman's house that he had designed. The second I did was add an extension to a Chittale house, because both of them didn't want to do it. And that's how, we started out our work. So we started from very, very small beginnings. And let me tell all of you that the first few projects didn't pay us a rupee. They didn't pay us a rupee, because we took it up with the trust and faith that we could work for them and show them what we could do. But then we realized that that wouldn't happen. So all those learnings have helped us accept what it is. Is it conservative? It's conservative to the extent that the architect is conservative. You can always push your client to what you think you want to do. Murli is a good example. Red is a good example. Based on their philosophies, how they produce their work. I come from something completely different, and wherever I have worked, I have got what I wanted from each project. And it's been a success all through. But at the end of the day, the repeat client is what that keeps you going. I still don't have a portfolio, Kishore, to show anybody. I don't go seek work. I sit on a 4th floor that you have to climb 4 floors to come and see me. I live on a road with, I think, 40 architects.
That's the advantage of starting your firm in the 80s. So
we are all aspiring to get there.
I'm not sure if that will all work these days. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Murli,
Yeah.
Is it true, Murli, that what
students-
Pramod says?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got your
You
way.
know, I really agree. I'm from a very humble family. We used to live in two-room row houses and from a humble family background. And I never wanted to start a firm. I was happy as a teacher in SAP. And
Yeah. I
the
remember
weekends I would
they
travel.
used to call you McGill Murli.
Yeah,
Okay, please go ahead.
I was telling all my students till till I die I will be in SAP. But then the administrative load and academic load are so high. So one night I decided I will leave school. So my parents came from my native place. They sat with my wife, consoled her. They promised this guy will pay 5,000 rupees every month. Don't worry, you will get the salary like that. So that day, next day I got a call from Vidya, the school in Mylapore. So they called me. They said there are 2 projects, and you come and do it. So I was hoping it will be nice and reach the school. The administrative officer showed a wall and told me to open up so that they can give the books out for the students. So opening up the wall was one assignment. The other assignment was cutting the gift. There are a lot of furniture gifted by Mylapore Association. So all the chairs were of different heights, and I have to measure every chair, make every chair same, every table same. That was the next assignment. So I was heartbroken. And anyway, I thought the bad luck continues. So then I made everything, working drawing, did the job, and the carpenter's bill came to 1.6 lakhs. I found the guy was cheating. So I made it as 80,000. That's what he deserves. I gave it to Vidya Mandir. But this guy came rushing to my office. He was like a rowdy. I'm going to beat you. You very well change the figures. I stuck to the ground and he said, I know so many people in the board, they will throw you out. If you put 1.6 lakhs into your fees is 4,500. If you reduce it to 80, your fee is 2,500. So I said, nothing doing. You do whatever you want. This guy goes, and next day I got a call from the management, the committee. They were all sitting there. They happened to discuss on so many things. So I entered the room. They didn't give me a chair, so they made me stand. And they asked whether this has happened. I said, yeah, this is what I believe, and this guy doesn't deserve so much. So they listened to all that and made me go home. The next day, I was thinking, okay, whether I missed a golden opportunity. Next day, the management again calls me and makes me sit in a chair. And they said, we like your honesty and integrity. So we are going to give you projects worth around like 15 crore or something. So today's value, that time it was 2 crore. So within a day,
you're still doing the projects,
simple,
15 crores. It must be really
yeah.
good.
So what I'm trying to tell young people is you always be yourself. Don't have to change yourself and project. Now, after that, I did so many projects, so many schools, so many colleges. So word of mouth used to be the way you get projects. Like as Pramod said, we start with nothing. I remember Kovi Medical Hospital, I worked for 10,000 rupees, one of the biggest hospital in Coimbatore. My fee was as an associate, I got 10,000 rupees. But after that, I did 26 hospitals in Tamil Nadu. So I think you need to, take on the challenge, not worry about it.
Okay, good to hear that. But Kishore and Anu, I want to push this question. Do you really think the seniors have done well to lift the standards of profession? Or do you think they could have done better? Because, Chennai, I'm sure, has a very low fee base. Partly these guys are saying some good stories now, but had they done better, I'm sure the fee levels would have been better and it would have benefited both of you. Do you really agree that the seniors have done well to lift the profession?
See, we have been told many times by our clients that the fees that we quote are twice or thrice what established practices are charging, or what large corporate practices from Bangalore, etc., will charge. And we face these battles even today. But the way we look at it, fee is a reflection of how firms are structured. So both me and Biju, we are both heavily invested in every project, and we attend all meetings. We spend a lot of time personally, and hence it's difficult for us to work with low fee because it just won't be sustainable. So we are not heavily dependent on the system to run the projects. It's mainly our personal time and attention. So maybe many corporate firms may be able to charge a lower fee because of the way they're structured. The projects have a hierarchy, and there's a way in which they basically run through the projects in a very time efficient manner. I also guess at some point in the 90s or early 2000s, architects moved from charging, say, fees from a percentage of the project cost to a per square feet fee. And personally, at least, I feel that was the beginning of the end, for the profitability of the practice. The whole square feet fee per square feet culture, that's really what has killed our professional, financially, is what I feel. So if we stick to a reasonable percentage of project cost as the architect's fee, I think we take care of inflation and rising costs, and do not decouple our services from the project costs, and the economic realities of the time we are practicing in. So as a basic construction, costs have gone on from, let's say, 1,500 in 2005 to 3,000 per square feet today. The architect's fee is not doubled, in comparison. So that is something we need to correct. That's, I feel, also when we will regain some respect.
So basically what you're saying, Kishore, is that these guys could have done better.
I think this whole transition from a percentage to a per square feet, due to whatever pressures, post-liberalization, the volume suddenly went up, the project scales went up so much that a percentage fee would have looked, enormous at that point in time. So at some point,
probably you think, the percentage is so difficult to grasp. It looks a bit abstract, while square feet is something that everyone immediately connects and cross connects with various costs. Maybe it was not a bad thing.
Correct. So that is, but when the basis of that per square feet fee is not linked to a certain percentage of the project cost, you can always take a percentage of the approximate cost and then convert it into a fixed fee. Because of course there are clients who also feel that the architects will inflate the project cost just to get a higher fee. Unfortunately, that is also a kind of a image that is out there. So we work a lot on per square feet even today, but that per square feet is derived from a percentage, and we give that logic to the client. And most of them today we have seen are open to it, but there's been a lot of time that has gone and it's really a struggle to try and kind of get this going.
I know so far we focus only on fees, but what do you think about the quality of architecture? Because we not talk about exceptions, we talk about the average quality of architecture in a city. So compared to Bangalore, Ahmedabad. So what has been in your view, what do you think the preceding professionals or the firms have contributed? You feel comfortable sitting in Chennai and practicing?
Yeah, definitely we have also, much like I think most other architects here, have looked at other progressive cities and thought, the work there is better. But I agree that with Pramod sir and Murli sir, that you are only as good as, your own project. In the sense, if you're an architect and if you can drive the design and the quality of construction of your own project, then so be it. I think it would be remiss if we sit here and blame our seniors for the work that they have done. They have paved the way in many ways as well. But to answer your earlier question, Vatsan sir, what I do feel that we could have, as juniors, benefited from seniors is some sort of initiation into how these fee discussion and charging for projects they did, and how that can be improved, maybe. Opening up the conversation, because I think all of us as architects, we are thrown into the deep end, and then we have to figure out fee structure, be it per square foot or percentage, like you're swinging blind. But if there were forums such as this, where there can be an open discussion from our seniors, from people who have paved the way as to, what they did and what can be improved, I think that would have been great. And I feel like that aspect of it is definitely lacking.
A couple of interesting questions, but I'm just going to hold it for a moment because we are sort of approaching the last segment, and I'll take all those questions towards the end. So the last segment here is that we're going to talk in terms of working conditions. Okay, I'm sure all of you, when you first joined your firm, you would have cursed the architect who employed you for the poor salary they paid you. Okay, you wish those guys paid you a few more thousands because you'd say you guys don't really understand the cost of living, etc. But how are you guys now treating young recruits? you think your salaries that you offer, I'm not saying great, but good enough, reasonable? Let's be as candid as possible. So Murli, what do you think? Salary levels?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah. See, when I started my practice, when I started working with architects, there were only draftsmen used to be there. The architects were very less in number. So whatever detail I tried to learn, they will ridicule me. So I changed 5 to 7 offices. I couldn't learn architecture. But then now I feel every young architect whoever wants to come into the office, he is looking at job satisfaction and also the salary. So what I devised is we are focusing primarily on residences. So we have about 60 residences at a given point of time we are working. So we have about 14 junior architects, 14 junior architects. We give them each of them 3 residences. So right from the first client meet till the completion of the project, they are the coordinators, they are the architects, they tie with the consultants, they talk to the contractors. So they get to know everything about the projects. And once they do cross 1 year, they go become a design architects and they work there for 2 or 3 years and then they become senior architects. This is the format I have developed. So everybody could learn what is happening. So for the junior architect, we pay 15 to 18,000 depending upon the skill set and commitment. For the 1 year experienced design architect, we pay from 22,000 to 25,000 depending upon their involvement. If somebody is 5 years and if their involvement is good, they go up to 60. So somebody who is staying with me for some many years, I'm paying a lakh and more.
Okay, that's good numbers there. Pramod, apart from salary, what kind of opportunities you create for the personal growth of young professionals? And salary is one issue. The other is whether the firms take care of the personal growth of young architects who join the firm.
Yes, we do. For us, I think every person who works with us is somebody who's learning with us, who's growing with us. And we have a few things that we have actually inculcated in the office is that we only work 5 days a week. We never work overtime. Everybody gets enough leave in a year to travel. Loans are available for travel without interest. And at the end of 5 years, the person has worked with us, he gets a 5-month loyalty bonus. That 5-month loyalty bonus is for them to set out and do their own practice. So they have a cushion of money for them to start their own practice. Some of our people who work with us for 10 years even take some of the clients that we have with them.
With your blessings or otherwise?
Sorry?
He takes your clients with your blessings? Okay.
With my blessing.
Okay,
yes,
great.
because they have managed the client. No. And I'm also looking at them and saying, how will they get a new client? If they work 10 years with me, how are they going to get a new client? They have serviced this client. And therefore, if the client wants to go back to them, I'm not averse to it. But if they take a client that I have nurtured and grown over time, then it becomes an issue. But there are many firms that have opened up because of this one little thing that we have done, which is important.
I wish you well, Pramod. May you get more projects and more young architects in your firm. Sounds like a good plan there. Kishore,
I think it's a good plan.
yeah, of course it's a good plan. I'm agreeing with you. Kishore, just moving a bit further. You must be, both of you, Kishore and Anu, must be recruiting a lot of young, or if not a lot, a good number of young architects. If I tell you that, if I make the statement that colleges today, though may not produce profession-ready students, but they produce apprenticeship-ready students. Will that be a good characterization, or you say they're not even apprenticeship-ready? What is the quality of fresh graduates from the portfolios that you get?
Anu, if you don't mind, can I go first?
Well, go ahead.
No, I think I agree with you, Watson. I think they are apprenticeship ready, and students passing out today show a high level of skills. They high on energy, enthusiasm, the kind of software knowledge, and and skill sets they have is amazing. I mean, they're really eager to get into the thick of practice and get involved with new projects. That is something we've really enjoyed, and it's a good vibe that they bring into the studio. It's the whole culture energizes the studio in many ways. We get to listen to new music which you've never heard before. So in all, it's great energy to have young college pass outs. There are challenges, however, more with respect to the technical aspects of the practice. Their understanding of materials, the design process of a project, the various negotiations that happen in a project, the push and pull, the rejection of ideas is something, also that they need to understand and deal with. So this is something only working in a practice actually will introduce to a student. So while it is a responsibility of institutions, we feel, and in many way, to equip students with the basic skills of design, comprehending space, certain sensitivity to context and sight and other influences, etc. It's equally the practice's responsibility, to then handhold these young minds into the hustle and bustle of practice in that sense, So expectations have to be tempered by both sides. I mean, from the students as well as from the practice, we feel. And, the practice has to build in a 6 to 12-month period of further training, any new recruit who's just passed out. And we have seen many young architects come through, very nicely and be a real asset in our studio once we give them that kind of bandwidth to, settle down and find their feet.
I know I'm going to ask you slightly differently the same question. Suppose if you get, let's say, 200 portfolios a year, how many of them, in terms of percentage, you think would be of a good quality?
Sorry, sir, can you repeat that? There was some...
Yeah, I'm just saying, imagine you get about 200 portfolios a year asking for job or replacement. How much percentage of that you think would qualify for a serious consideration, and how much you would straight away reject?
A generous estimate would be around 10% of the
10% is what you will consider?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's not
and that also goes through a very rigorous process of us, checking our colleagues as to if they have worked in someone's firm that we know, then checking with them, and if they've presented some software skills in their portfolios, then verifying those. We do go through a fairly stringent screening method before they actually join our teams.
Okay, that doesn't sound very encouraging. But if that's the fact, let's face it, that's what it is.
I think that also comes from having invested in without doing invested in someone without maybe taking those steps, and then then their learning curve is so much more longer, and so I think that's just out of experience, basically.
So I've heard, though I don't run a practice myself, but I've heard from friends that really they invest a good amount of time in training. So probably the schools must share a portion of the fee in completing the education there. I mean, in a lighter vein, I'm saying. Before we go further, I've some few questions here, and we are also coming to the end. So let me take the questions here. So a couple of questions connected to what we were currently discussing. So there's Anup, who's asking, what should be the salary of a fresher architect, in your opinion? What do you think is a reasonably good, or not a good, but reasonable salary that a fresher must get?
So we pay 20,000, and we feel that's probably on par with similar practices. So we find that reasonable.
You're saying Chennai pays anything between 15?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about many firms, but at least comparable firms like ours, I think 20,000 is what we feel. 18 to 20,000 would be a good, reasonable.
You think that's a reasonable fresh? Okay, we'll not debate that, so we'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless someone else has got really a steep figure, and I think Murli has got to offer some. No, same as that.
Sorry, can you come again?
I'm saying I thought is 20 the correct average thing across the city for the fresh?
No, in our office, the problem is when the fresher comes, many of the offices, they train them to do drafting. But we are looking at it from a very different perspective. The young guy who comes in, He doesn't know, guy or girl, doesn't know much about anything. So we kind of orient them for 3 to 4 months. So that actually every fresher who joins my company, so I work with them every day. The sense from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, we have client meetings. So the young boy is taken into my fold, and every day I, like a mentor, I sit with them, and then orient the client discussions are conducted by me. The juniors sit in the room. So the money generated through the projects are very less. If somebody wants to learn, then I'm able to pay only this much, 15 to 8.
So what you're saying
if
is
I pay
that,
more, if I pay more, then I have to, extract. I don't want to extract anything for my smaller residences.
So
I'm
basically what you're saying is that you're not employing a graduate, you're basically employing an intern, and you're running a completion school.
Yeah.
Okay. So and hence you
No,
think
it's
that
more
you
like, Frank Wright approach. They get to do things like a hands-on. They go to site. They can stay in the site as long as they want. I'm not asking them to produce any drawing. So they will be like a coordinator for some time. Once they have a feel of it, then they begin to draw on their own. So till that time, I have to wait. So the minute they join, if I start demanding results, then it puts pressure on the young kid, and they may not be able to really take it.
Okay. Connected to this, there is another question saying, someone is, DP is asking, do you think architects taking up academics is a good backup idea in terms of revenue and engagement? Anyone wants to respond? Pramod, I know you're very involved in education. What do you think about it, Pramod?
I don't look at education as a paying thing. I look at it as my contribution to it. So I don't expect any returns on it. Therefore, I go there and give my time because of the fact that I love to do it, and I'm hoping it helps. I don't go and tell them. I don't even find out how much I'm paid.
But Pramod, don't you think it's a fair question if the profession is not paying enough and I really want to set up office? So for me to do 2 jobs, is that a bad thing to do?
No, it's not a bad thing to do at all. As long as you have the time and you're able to manage the time, definitely. I used to go to SAP in the earlier years and spend half a day, 1 day. It didn't make it. It was enriching for me also, right, to be involved with the young, right? So it is definitely important for professionals to be involved in education and not look at it as an income. The moment you become to look at it as income generation, then your attitude to education will change.
Okay.
Just to counter to that, I mean, the other flip side that I'm seeing now is that I've been seeing a lot of young architects spend a year and then, working somewhere and then immediately applying as a junior teacher or junior professor back in a college, and frankly, having very little to contribute to the whole academic, growth of a student. And that I find is the flip side, because of the number of colleges and the demand for teachers being so high. I think that also has a detrimental kind of an effect on the quality of students passing out. So that's just a tricky situation we are in. And while I completely agree that professionals, once they have a reasonable amount of experience and work under their belt, should go back and should delve into academics. Definitely no 2 ways about it. But the flip side of the supply and demand of teachers, the gaps that we have is that you have these situations where very pass outs with a very little experience or very little understanding of what they're actually getting into are actually going and teaching. So that's the only thing that we need to.
Point taken there. There is also one more question connected to this, and there are 2 more. We'll probably wrap with that. The related question is, what should be the minimum experience a fresh grad student should have before being considered either as a serious assistant architect or even to set up practice? So Anu, you have anything to offer there?
I mean, I I barely had experience before I started my practice, so I would not be the right person to comment on that. But I do agree with what Kishore said as to someone having a certain amount of practice before they can, impart that on young minds through education. I don't have a quantifiable figure there, but I do agree that that has to be there.
Okay. Pramod, do you have something to say on that? Number
I
there?
missed the question.
That is, how many minimum years do you think a young grad student should have before it should be taken as a serious assistant architect or set up a practice?
Okay. There are lots of ambiguity there. First of all, the quality of the person who's there, the kind of office he goes to, and what kind of office setup he goes to. You can't really say whether he has to have 2 years experience or 5 years experience. It's his hunger to learn and how much he learns, the confidence he gets in himself to set up a practice. So you can't say somebody with 2 years cannot set up a practice, or somebody with 10 years cannot set up, or somebody fresh cannot set up a practice. It's left to that particular person. Not the overconfidence, but the understanding that he has some level of knowledge to be able to take that risk to start a practice. Because starting a practice is a risk. I have lots of people coming to me who've started practices and have closed down their practices and looking for employment. So that is something that you need to do. It's not easy. Running a practice is not easy. It's all nice and clean on the other side.
Point taken there. Last two questions connected to environment. It's something that we never touched. So Satya and Ranjan are asking this question. Given the kind of environmental conditions that we are practicing in, would you ever tell your clients to build less? Because every building makes a severe impact. Would architects have, let's say, expand that question and say, would architects ever advise the client to build less? Kishore.
Yeah, so we do that. I mean, we do that because many a time we've seen that clients come to us, for example, recently in a school with X number of classrooms, etc. They come to us with a brief, and then we through the design process and through a constant communication find out ways in which we can actually reuse certain rooms in multiple ways and hence reduce the amount of area you're actually building. So I think these are the conversations that architects, responsible architects, should bring to the table, with clients. So it's not about just building more; it's about building sensitively. And I think our value comes in that conversation, where we actually talk to clients about what is really appropriate for them. Many a time they don't really know. Many a time what we end up giving them at the end of the design process is something. The brief is just a trigger, but the rest of the process is what completely transforms that project into something much more meaningful. So I think taking the brief at face value and giving the clients what they want is probably you're not really doing justice to what you're supposed to. So I think that conversation and trying to find that sweet spot with building just enough, to kind of do better, to the environment and not really overbuild. I think that's something all of us should be doing as responsible professionals.
Okay, last word to you, Murali. In this pandemic, have you sort of innovated on any sort of environmentally sensitive, construction methods or design?
I've been lately doing is infuse lots of nature into all my projects. I'm a big fan of F.V. Bava. So every level, if the land is less, at least we create garden in the terraces, and every balcony there will be a garden. It won't be like a balcony; it will be like a large space. So continuously in every project, there are at least 5 to 6 courtyards will be there, and minimum 1 tree we will plant in every project. That's minimum. That's what I'm doing.
Okay, great. One last question, and we'll wrap it with that. Anu, that's for you. So you'll have the last word. The question is, why don't we see more professionals taking design studios in Chennai colleges? Something that is normal in other cities. Anu, have you got any experience of?
So I used to do design studio about 7-8 years ago at Midas. I did a couple of years there, but currently I am not involved in the education space, but Tahir, my partner, is very, very active in the education space, and he does do design studios virtually, of course, in the current environment. So that is happening.
So you're saying that there are enough happening. Okay.
I'm saying at least we are trying to do it. I don't know if there are enough people doing it, but
Okay, fair
we
enough.
are taking care of it.
Fair enough. So we'll wrap it here. We almost reached 8 o'clock, and I'm very happy to see we logged with 100 participants, and we are almost 98, 97. That I think speaks for both your commitment as listeners and also an engaging conversation all the panelists offered. So thanks once again. Before we say goodbye, I want to just remind you, in a couple of weeks, we'll have the third session, which will look at the challenges of the beginners. So we are looking at firms less than 5 years, and we are going to talk more in terms of what these firms are doing and how they're managing. And I even heard about one firm who's doing far more than even seniors, I'm told. So we're great to listen to them as to how well they've done and also some of the issues. So we'll meet that. And the last of the series, the fourth one, is going to be the innovations a few firms across this country, and few of them, particularly in Chennai, have done in the last few years. They've come up with some radical ideas of how to practice, and they've actually operationalized that, and it'll be good to hear. So that will be the fourth. So we'll talk about innovations, and that's a good way to end this series. Thank you once again, panelists, Pramod, Murli, Kishore, and Hanu. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I hope everyone who listened found it quite engaging and enriching. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Saira, for coordinating all this. And thanks, CAF, for hosting this.
Thank you.
Good night. Stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye. Good night.